disruptive.
America that I fought.
Weird thing to happen. So we know that not only COVID was catastrophic for many people during the disastrous days of the pandemic, but it was also a money-making opportunity for the bureaucrats, the aristocrats, and the profiteers from big pharmaceutical lobby groups to people investing in the stocks that made an extraordinary amount of money during the pandemic, during our desperate despair of this viral outbreak. And new details are emerging from a New York Post article here saying that the NIH scientists made $710 million in royalties from drug makers, a fact they tried to hide. And this is an article written by this guy, Adam Anderszewski. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he runs an organization called Open the Books, and he's been doing a lot of investigations on the money laundering that's been around with the pandemic, how all of a sudden these billionaires came to be. So he's been doing really incredible work on that and been a true investigator on this. So he writes that during the pandemic, the American people started to feel that big government was very closely with Big Pharma. Now we know just how close they were. And the sad part is I think people knew how cozy big government was to big pharmaceuticals. They know for a while that they've been having a very cozy relationship, that there's a medical fascism, if you will, before the pandemic. But then all of a sudden, something just changed and a complete 180 happened, and all of a sudden, Big Pharma was good. Big Pharma was good. Forget the opioids. We have a medical emergency to deal with. New data from the National Institute of Health revealed the agency and its scientists collected $710 million in royalties during the pandemic from late 2021 through 2023. These are payments made by private companies like pharmaceuticals to license medical innovations from government scientists. Almost all that cash, $690 million, went to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, a sub-agency led by Dr. Anthony Fauci and 260 of its scientists. Information about this vast private royalty complex is tightly held by the National Institutes of Health. My organization, OpenTheBooks.com, was forced to sue the sue to uncover the royalties paid from September 2009 to October 2021, which amounted to $325 million over 56,000 transactions. We had to sue for a second time with the Judicial Watch as our counsel to pry open this new release. So every time that they tried to release this information, part of the Freedom of Information Act, Dr. Fauci and subordinates within the medical tyranny were trying to suppress that. They were trying to suppress the visibility of that information. They were trying to lock down. They were trying to cover it up. They were trying to restrict people from getting access through the Freedom of Information Act. And they didn't want people to be aware, not only of how this virus started, but also the notorious lies that they've been spewing for numerous years now, and also the money-making opportunity that this came to be. Payments skyrocketed during the pandemic era. Those years saw more than double the amount of cash flow to the NIH from the private sector compared to the prior 12 combined. All told, it's $1.036 billion. It's unclear if any of the COVID vaccine royalties from Pfizer and Moderna, the latter of which settled with NIH by agreeing to pay $400 million, is even included in these new measures. NIH isn't saying. The American people have one last crack at getting some candor from Fauci, the face of our COVID response, when he testifies Monday before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, which again, he did not answer to. He did not answer. He did not respond. He lied about how much money he was getting. Oh, I only got like $100. It was no big deal. It was basically like a gift card. They just thanked me with a gift card. I never got any money. I was doing it for the fact of science. And if you question me, you're questioning science. There's plenty to answer for. He spends years scoffing at questions about potential conflicts of interest between COVID policymakers who relentlessly push vaccines and recipients of private royalties. Now he'll also need to account for bombshell emails sent by one of his deputies, which described in-house strategies to circumvent the Federal Freedom of Information Act. Fauci won't be able to misspell words to evade scrutiny or have folks physically courier messages, just two of the FOIA avoiding actions described by Dr. David Morans, a key Fauci deputy. Instead, cameras from around the world will be trained on Fauci, and he'll be answering for the information he gave in a sworn deposition earlier this year. It's a chance to either come clean or further cement the public's perception of him and the NIH as secretive and self-interest. Beyond this small cabal of scientists covering up discussions of the virus origin, NIH has consistently treated FOIA requests like viral attacks on their own. No wonder then and that they're plaintiffs in 6 ongoing FOIA cases. Characteristically, NIH is still redacting pieces of the data that would help us more easily connect therapeutics with their government-paid investors. For example, they refuse to show us the amount of royalties paid to each individual scientist so that we can't entirely follow the money. In the meantime, Senator Rand Paul has sponsored the Royalty Transparency Act, which sailed anonymously through the committee process and deserves a floor vote immediately. There's plenty Fauci can do in the meantime, too. He could indicate he supports bills like Paul's. He could call on the NIH and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention to voluntarily unmask the royalty payments. When he could, then we could see whether their decisions have advanced the general welfare of their own. Fauci could also support fixes to the FOIA law that creates real consequences for those who purposely violate it. But at most, he's going to continuously lie. That's Fauci's the only thing he can do. Is can notoriously lie, dig himself further down his hole, and further expose what a pathological lying supervillain he is. At minimum, he must apologize for the utter contempt for the FOIA and the transparency war waged against his colleagues that's now been revealed in private communications. Among the government's most basic duties to the public are providing for the general welfare and reporting its income and spending. As Fauci wraps 5 decades in government, having become its highest paid bureaucrat, he should consider ticking those boxes again for old time's sake. Yeah, he should, but he's not going to. And that's why he's been government and the highest paid bureaucrat for 5 decades. Of course, there's a lot of things he could be doing, but he's not going to do it. And purposely because he wants to be in that pedestal for as long as he can. And in order to do so, you don't do it by being good, by being nice and serving people. You do it by being a coward. You be a liar. You be a chauvinist. You deceive against people. That's the only way you get to the top in these situations. When you're part of this criminal cabal of insane psychopaths and ego-fragile maniacs, that's the only thing you can do. Because everything else is just, it's career suicide, as politicians would say. It's career suicide to actually do something for the people. It's career suicide to acknowledge your position and your obligation to actually serve people. It's career suicide. So, of course, Fauci is not going to do any of this. Fauci is continuously still deceiving, lying to people. And the fact that he's still in this position of power, the fact that he has not been sustained after all these years, again, go look at the Fauci files when he was working to to treat people of AIDS. Look at that, how that turned out. Go read the book that RFK Jr. Published about Anthony Fauci. If even a smidge of that convinces you how much of a heinous villain this is, he should be locked away for life. He should be locked away in criminal prosecution of the heinous acts that he's done to the people. But he's not going to. And that's all this testimony is. It's theatrics. Everything that you're seeing here is theatrics. The ability that he's been in this position of power for all these decades, for all this time, and still continues to be, shows how deeply, deeply corrupted, how catastrophically corrupted the whole entire system is. The whole entire system is a ploy against the public. And they don't want to lose their key figure. The pharmaceutical lobby groups, the Pfizer, Moderna, the AstraZeneca, all the top scientists that have deceived you and lied to you. They don't want to lose their top mascot that's propagandizing paranoid people on mainstream television into their ways. So, of course, Fauci is not going to do any of those things. It's nice that you offered. It's nice that he gave him suggestions, but he's not going to take any of those. Because he is a pathological, evil, villainous liar. That in order for him to keep his career, the only reason he is the top bureaucrat of science, to use the term lightly, is that he deceives people. That's the only way you get on the top. You don't do it by kindness and well wishes. That's what I've learned in this deep dive of the deep state and the mass corruption within the system. Is you don't strive to get ahead when you're kind and gushy towards people. You deceive, you sell yourself out, you sell off your soul, and you just become an empty figurehead of the mass amount of deception, chaos, and corruption and deposition against the general public. That's what Fauci is doing. This is brought to you by Ground News, the versatile news app and website that gathers all the world's media on one place and allows users to compare coverage. Ground News gives you the access of thousands of sources worldwide, allows you to see the media blind spots, and even gives analysis on the bias and factuality of those stories. Weave your way through the mainstream narratives, the corporate lies, and have total access to find complete information that you deserve. Click on the link below and get 15% off a subscription. Be critical, be informed, be ground.